What you cooking, Mom?
Cut. Fucking cut.
Now I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go purchase one. That's the problem.
This ain't for me. I was like,
the background is mom and dad was addicted to crack cocaine. Okay. Right?
Hi, how are ya? Welcome to another episode of the Doc Holliday Show, where we love to uplift black men, black woman, black teen, black child, black royalty, the magically melanated. Today, I am joined by a royal elder, magically melanated, a.k.a. black man. But what I say a magically melanated, someone who I respect a great deal, Mr. Robert Avery. Mr. Avery, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Doc. If it was any better, like I said, I'd get worried, man. There'd be something wrong.
Well, first of all, you look great. I mean, I like the suit coat. You're sharp. You know, what your wrinkles at? Did you lose? Because you ain't got no wrinkles or nothing, man. You look absolutely amazing, Mr. Avery.
Well, I appreciate that, but you know, it's just that good life, I guess. You know, living that good life.
Now that's that favorite. Now, Mr. Avery, I know who you are. I played football at the University of Memphis State with your son, Bobby Avery. Y'all from Alabama. He's a good guy. You're a good man, and I just found out your story last week. So, first of all, tell the people, a little background, where you from, city, state, and just a little bit of your background, Mr. Avery.
Okay. Of course, Robert Avery, and I'm from Gasden, Alabama. Gasden is located halfway between Birmingham and Chattanooga, Tennessee, at the foothills of the Appalachian chain mountains. Well, Doc, I'm 73. I'll be 74.
Oh man, just stop lying. I'm sorry, Mr. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm sorry.
I'll be 74. I'll be 74 in a few months. I came along, Doc, in an age where, things were not, well, I don't know what word I want to use, but a child of the 50s and the 60s, then you understand the situation we had back then. But Gaston is a beautiful town. I served 24 years on the Gaston City Council. I was the first black to be elected to that city council back in 1986. Even though it's not paid political, but I am a candidate for mayor now of the city. So I don't know if I can say that on your show.
Yes, sir. You say whatever you want to say. Matter of fact, repeat it again. Say it again, Mr. Avery.
I am a candidate for the mayor of the city of Gaston in the upcoming election, which will be in August. Like I said, I served 24 years on the city council. I've been out of office for 8 years now. I hadn't been out of politics, but I've been out of office. I worked at Goodyear Tire Company for 30 years. I retired about 20 years ago. Since that time, I've been working for my wife. And when I say I'm working for my wife, I'm really working for my wife. She has a consulting company, and we work with nonprofits and small businesses, and we try to help them in obtaining grants. And of course, with all of the federal dollars that are coming down the pike now, we try to advise them on applying for some of those federal dollars. And I also do some work with municipalities. We do consulting work with them to make sure they get that money to the right people. We got quite a bit of federal dollars coming down the pike. So that's basically what I do. Right now, I'm on the road, as a matter of fact. I stopped and pulled into a rest stop, believe it, Doc, or not. I was in Washington for several days, and then I've been in Virginia since then, but I'm on my way back to Alabama now.
Well, Mr. Avery, I appreciate you so much for stopping at that rest stop, giving us some time, giving us some of your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience. Now, first of all, I salute you to where you are and where your wife is, and all the progress that you have made and we have made as a race, because I'm able to do what I'm doing here today, and Cassius McGowan, owner of ISF Productions, is able to do what he's doing because of men like yourself. Now, Mr. Avery, tell me how life was back in Gasden, Alabama growing up? Because I know you made a trek because you wanted to hear what Dr. Martin Luther King, his speech in Washington, D.C. in '63. But tell me how, the racial prejudices and the racism and all that, how it was in Alabama, because that is the deep South, and what you had to endure and how you had to fear for your life and, just, maneuvering your way through that.
Well, as you know, like I said, back in the 50s and 60s, of course, segregation was alive and well. Integration came along right at the time I finished high school. As a matter of fact, they integrated the school system there my junior year. Of course, I stayed with the black high school. My wife did go to the white high school. She graduated from that school, but I continued to go to school at Carver. I was somewhat of a football star. And so I stayed at my school. But I say that to say that, schools were segregated. And even though the communities and the schools were segregated, some communities, believe it or not, at the dividing line of the black community and the white community, black kids and white kids played together until, and this is a thing that people need to understand, until they got to high school, which was real interesting. But once they got to high school, of course, they separated and they couldn't be our friends anymore. But as long as we were elementary school kids in that age group, we could play. It was just a strange time for race, relationships, and things that were happening in the community.
What kind of fears I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Avery. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Now, what kind of fears did you have? I guess, being in that area, because we know here in Tennessee, Pulaski, where the KKK started and everything that was, our people had to go through and endure. I mean, what kind of fears did you have? Or did you, were you, living a life hoping, nothing didn't happen to you as far as the lynchings and everything that was taking place here in the South?
Well, as a young kid, we didn't think about that. We had the occasional Ku Klux Klan riding through the community. I don't know if I won't say we were afraid, but we knew that they were there. Okay. And but that was in, when I was real young. When I got to high school again, things began to change because the movement had started. As you know, the movement and the demonstrations in Birmingham, the demonstrations started in our city. As a matter of fact, people always talk about Birmingham, where they had the dogs and the hoses on those young people. But Doc, in Gasden, we introduced the cattle prod. And I'm pretty sure most of your listeners don't know what a cattle prod is. Do you know what a cattle prod is?
I think that's I know it was electric, and you put it on the. I mean, I don't know. You tell me, Mr. Avery.
Yeah, you about right. It's a long metal rod that's filled with batteries, and they've got the prongs at the end. And when they want to move the cattle along to a certain way or through a gate, they shock them with it. And of course, that was introduced into the civil rights movement in Gasden. Colonel Al Lingo. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who history buffs have heard of Colonel Lingo. He was George Wallace's right-hand man, along with Bull Connell out of Birmingham. But they introduced the cattle prods there in Gasden during the demonstrations and stuff. And of course, things changed. And I won't say we were afraid. As a matter of fact, we wasn't afraid. We realized that things could be better. I couldn't go to, we didn't have McDonald's, but I couldn't go to a burger place that we had, the local burger places, and of course, buy a burger. You could go to the back of the building, and some of them would sell you ones, but a lot of them wouldn't even do that. If you went downtown to the stores, the 5 and 10 cent store back then, they had a lunch counter. You couldn't eat at the lunch counter. A lot of the stores, you couldn't even try the clothes on. If you wanted to buy some shoes or buy a pair of pants, you had to buy it and leave with them. You couldn't try them on, and if they didn't work or didn't fit or you didn't like them, you could try on some more. But again, up until the movement started, that was just life, and that's the things that a lot of people accepted back in those days.
Now, Mr. Avery, when you talk about the cattle prod, so you mean I want to go back to that. So the police or whoever would use the cattle prod on you all when you all were trying to organize a march, because I know you were big in the movement. Is that what they used to do, to put the cattle prod on us to get us to moving and get us to scattering?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, to this day, I still have a mark. Well, I have a couple of marks, but I have one indented mark in my inner thigh where I was stuck with the cattle prod. They would burn it into you. But yeah, it was to scatter people, to make the picketers and the marchers move on. I don't know if it was a lot more effective than the water or the dogs, but I know it was more brutal than the water and the dogs. As a matter of fact, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal did a research that said that Gasden was the most brutal city in the South during the movement because of the things that happened there with the cattle prods and some other things. But yeah, that was the purpose of those cattle prods, was to make us move on.
Now, Mr. Avery, despite all of that, the cattle prod and Gasden being one of the most brutal parts of the civil rights movement, as far as how the authorities treated us and who were just fighting for rights, you still decided to become a part of the movement despite all of that. I mean, fearlessly. I mean, I guess I can ask you what made you spark that, but where did the bravery and the courage come from, as far as you're concerned, that like, regardless of what you all trying to do, regardless of how y'all trying to terrorize us, regardless of what y'all trying, how y'all trying to oppress and suppress us, me as a young man, I'm still going to go on this movement. And how old were you when you decided you made that decision?
Well, probably 14 when I really decided to make that decision. Like I said, we had the summer of 62, we had a little bit of movement, demonstrations and stuff, but the summer of 63 was the big year, not only for Birmingham, but also in Gasden. What happened that really got me involved, and when I do public speaking, and when I talk to a lot of young people, because we don't know our history and we don't know the history, I tell them about a Baltimore mailman who just by chance happened to be white. He came down from Baltimore and he was going to march his original plan was to march from Baltimore to Mississippi, to Jackson, to deliver a letter to then Governor Ross Barnett. But he changed his mind about that, so he took a bus to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and he decided to walk from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Jackson, Mississippi. And the highway that he took came right through our town. And when he was on his way through Alabama, about 7 or 8 miles from where I live, he was shot and killed by the Klans because of his protest. And I think that was the really, really spark that really got me going, because, I'm saying to myself, here's a white man. Because heretofore before, there was not a whole lot of white people demonstrating with us. But here's a white man who came all the way from Baltimore, Maryland, to help fight for my freedom and my right. And here I am not doing what, I could be doing for myself. And I think that was the spark that really got me wholeheartedly involved in the movement and the demonstrations.
Now, talking about that, taking that to the March on Washington, you see Dr. Martin Luther King going, they marching on Washington. I have a dream speech. You're just a young child, a young magically melanated royal in Gaston, Alabama, deep in racist country. So Tell me that story. I read it. So you decide at that 14 that this man had just got killed for trying to help, fight against segregation. You're thinking you came up with the great idea. I won't say the great idea to do what, Mr. Avery?
Well, I won't take the credit for it. It was a friend of mine. There was 3 of us.
Yes, sir. It was 3 of you all. Yes, sir.
3. And like I said, we were, doing the demonstrations and stuff on Sundays. We would have what we call strategy sessions, and we would sit down and decide where we're going to picket and what stores we're going to hit and all that stuff. Like I said, I was 14 when Moore was killed, but I turned 15 that August. The march was in August, and we were sitting around that Sunday afternoon, and one of the guys said, "Man, I sure do want to go to that march in a couple of weeks, hear Dr. King speak." And there was 3 or 4 of us sitting there, and I said, "Man, I'd like to go too, but my family can't afford that." And believe it or not, it was just $25 for the bus ride. But $25 back then, I'm not sure what the equivalent of it is today, but
probably 250 or something.
It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I came from a family of 10. So there was a bunch of us. So again, my family couldn't afford it. And he said, "Man, I've been thinking about hitchhiking." And I said, "Yeah, okay. That sounds good." And 2 or 3 other guys, "Oh yeah, that sounds good, man." He said, "No, man, I'm serious. I've been thinking about hitchhiking." A couple of guys got up and walked off because they thought he was crazy. And so the other guy and myself, we just sit there and listen to him. And the more he talked about it, it kind of dawned on me, wow, man, let's do that. Because, again, I guess my mind went back to William Moore and this man coming down, marching and protesting. And we got to do something, and I got to do something. So we decided to hitchhike, the 3 of us. The guy who made the initial talk about it, his name was Robert Frank Thomas. He's passed away now, but Frank was the oldest. He was 18. James Foster Smith, the other guy, was 17, and of course I had just turned 15. We went to James Foster Smith house first because he lived the farthest away from the highway that we were going to take to go to DC. And his folks, man, just raised all kind of saying, "You crazy, you can't do that, you can't do that." And we sit there and we talked and talked till we finally convinced his people, his grandmother, because most of the people back in those days either stayed with their grandmothers or families. And they finally just gave in and said, okay. So the next house was my house. And I went to my house and we walked in and I said, "Mom, we're getting ready to hitchhike to Washington. And, I need some clothes. And if you got a few dollars, I need a few dollars." And she said, "Okay." She said, "Y'all need to be careful." And that was it. That was all she said. "Okay, you guys need to be careful." And then, of course, we went to the guy who was the oldest in the group, and boy, his grandma just said, "No, you ain't going. That's it. And y'all ain't gonna do this." And of course, pretty much she never said he could go, but he just was defiant because it was his idea. And now the 2 of us, are ready to go. So he just left. We all left. Gasden is like I said, the foothills of the mountains. The route we had to take, we had to go up the mountain. And where William Moore was killed was on Highway 11, US Highway 11. And we had to go up Highway 11 in order to go to Washington. That was the route. I still thought the guy was kidding. And and the other guy, James Foster, we kind of hung back a little bit. You say, "You think this fool really gonna hitchhike?" And Foster said, "Nah, man." He said, "We're gonna get up here. He's gonna turn around." Because now it's dark, it's late. So we started up Highway 11. And all of us knew where William Moore, the spot where he was killed. And as we approached that spot, I was on the inside, the side of the road where the spot was. I just walked around and got on the outside of the group. And that left James Foster closest to the inside. And I think he realized what I had done because we were coming up on that spot. Then he walked around and got on the outside of me. Now, remember this is 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we on a 2-lane highway. Of course, thank God there wasn't no traffic. But we out there in the middle of the highway, basically. And Robert Frank, the oldest guy, knew what was going on. And by that time, we had walked up on the spot where William Moore was shot. And he said, this ought to be inspirational to us. We had a prayer. And I don't believe from that moment for the whole time, I thought about turning around. I never got tired of walking or never was worried or concerned about anything happening or nothing. It was just uplifting, and I'm not sure what had happened, but praying there at that spot had a major effect on me. I don't know about the rest of them, but it had a major effect on me as to how I felt about the whole trip and everything. And I need to go back and let people know and let you know, we left 10 days before the march. This was on the 18th of August that we left going to the march because we didn't know how long it was going to take us. And when we left, we had $10 between the 3 of us.
Hold on, Mr. Avery. Hold on, Mr. Because first I looked at my phone while you was talking. I wasn't trying to be rude. I was like, hold on. These young men, these young brave men, because it's almost 700 miles from Gasden, Alabama to D.C. And go back to, y'all had a tinky? I call that a tinky. Y'all had a tinky? $10?
Yeah, that's what we had. And again, $10 was a pretty good sum of money. But you also got to understand, we didn't know anybody in Washington. We didn't know what we were going to do when we get there or anything. But we was fortunate enough. The first ride we got was a Greyhound bus. We was out in the middle of the highway, and the guy almost ran over us. And he said, "What are y'all boys doing out here this time morning?" And we said, "We're going to Washington." And he looked at us and he said, "Going to Washington?" We said, "Yeah, we're going to the march." He said, "Do y'all know where y'all at?" And of course, yeah, we know. We at the spot where William Moore got killed, basically. And he said, "Y'all get on this bus," because that was Ku Klux. That was Alabama's Pulaski, the Fort Payne area, and that area where Moore was killed. And of course, he took us on into Chattanooga, Tennessee. And of course, we stayed there at the bus station till the got light, and then we started on our walk again. It's very interesting because all of the rides that we received between Alabama and DC, all of the rides were white people, except the last ride that we got in Lynchburg, Virginia. It was a black family that picked us up. But it took us 3 days. We got to Washington on Wednesday. And again, like I said, we didn't know anybody. We didn't know what was going on. The Reverend Walter Funtroy, who I think was the first DC delegate, the first guy who represented DC in the Congress, even though, they don't have a vote, but he was the first guy to represent DC. He was the president at that time of SCLC and NAACP and all that group. And we found the office. Let me back up. When we got to DC, nobody knew where the March on Washington office was. We were on Georgia Avenue. If you know anything about DC, Georgia Avenue is where Howard University is. And, it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and only the street people, the club folks, they didn't know anything about where the march location was, the office was. But the police officer knew where the NAACP office was. He told us how to get to that. So we went around And thank God there was a name on the window. And back then we had phone booths. Kids don't know what phone booths are today. but we had phone booths, and we went across the street to the phone booth, looked his name up. Mind you, we're gonna call this man at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And they put me up to talk to him because, you know, I'm the youngest, I'm the fool. I mean, you know, you can do it. We had 15 cents left when we got to the phone booth. When we got to DC, we had enough to get us a cup of coffee. The three of us got some coffee, and we had 15 cents left. It was a dime to use the telephone, okay? So now we putting our last dime into this phone. The phone rang, and Reverend Fontroy answered it. And I said, Reverend, I told him my name. I'm from Alabama, and me and my friends just hitchhiked. He said, what the? And he called himself. I think he was finna cuss. He said, who is this with this crank call? Don't be called in my house. And the guy with me heard him in the background. And he said, oh, Reverend, no. He's telling the truth. And so he finally calmed down and told us how to get over to the March on Washington headquarters. But we spent the first few hours at night there at the YMCA. He told us how to get there. He called over and got us a room. So they put us up at the Y. And then, of course, we got up the next morning and went over to the headquarters. We went in and told the people our story. They said, well, we can find something for you to do. By that time, Reverend Fontroy came in. He said, where are those fools from Alabama? You know, and everybody kind of laughed and pointed to us. But anyway, that's a lifelong friend we met. They put us to work in the headquarters. And if I was at home, I would show, but they can go online and see stuff. All of those professional signs that you see when you see pictures of Dr. King at the march,
yes, sir, or
the marching, I claim now, and no, ain't nobody here to dispute it. I claim I touched every last one of those signs. What happened was, it was our job to put them together and staple them. And the night before the march, we took them out to the parade ground. So I claim, like I said, I touched every last one of them. And I don't think nobody's here to dispute that yet.
I'm not going to do it.
But that was my first opportunity to meet Dr. King. I never will forget. Like I said, we got there on a Wednesday. And that Friday night, Dr. King spoke at a rally in Gasden. And I still don't know which parent talked to him, but one of our parents talked to him. All of our parents were very active in the movement. And it could have been both of them or all of them. They told him that we were in Washington and asked him to check on us. Undoubtedly, he said about going to Washington. So that Saturday morning, you know, we were back there putting the signs together. And there was a big commotion at the front door. And anytime there's a commotion, because there was a lot of bomb threats and everything, you know, you stop what you're doing, you check to see what's going on. A bunch of reporters came in with the TV cameras and the flashing lights and stuff. And over in the middle of that crowd was Dr. King. You couldn't see him, and most people don't realize his stature. He was not a very tall individual, but he had that distinguished voice. And you could hear him tell the reporters himself, he said, look, I got something to do. He said, but as soon as I do what I got to do, I'll come back and I'll answer your questions. True to his word, the first thing he did when he walked in that building, he came back to where we were working. And when I think back, I don't know if there was a whole lot of young people there or three in a group working together, but anyway, I don't remember him asking anybody where we were, but he walked just as straight as he could back to where we were. And, you know, and I'm down there, you know, with the signs, and I look up and, you know, there's Dr. King standing there, and I couldn't say anything. I mean, I was speechless. And he said, are you guys okay? and I'm looking up like a dummy, couldn't say nothing. Then one of the other guys, I think the older guy, said, "Yeah, we okay." He said, "Good." He said, "I just came from your hometown, and I told your folks I'm going to check on you." He said, "Then I'll be back." Again, true to his word, he went back. He did his little news conference and asked all the questions. And then he came back to where we were. You got to realize, or I didn't realize at the time, and as I think back, this is the most important man in the world, not just in the country at that time. Took time out of his schedule to speak to 3 little black boys from Alabama. And again, like I say, I never will forget that. And he really let us talk. He didn't do the talking. He asked 1 or 2 questions, but he let us talk about our dreams and the things that we wanted to see happen and what motivated us to get there, to come and everything. So again, that was my first opportunity to meet Dr. King. I did meet him on several other occasions after that, but Doc, it was a great experience. It was a great experience. I'll remember that to the day I die.
And it's such an amazing story, and I appreciate you sharing and just the things that you went through, your generation, my dad's generation. And I mean, I can't imagine. And this is what I want to apologize to you. And every time I get around a royal elder, because I call y'all royal elders because y'all royal to me, y'all magically melanated black men, black women, is that because I hear young people say, "Man, if they didn't want my money, I wouldn't have shopped in that store. I wouldn't have ate there." But it's easier said than done, because I'm pretty sure the options were limited and you had to eat and you had to get clothes. So I apologize for all the ignorant people of my generation that says that kind of stuff, and that also say, because I see the shirt sometimes, Mr. Avery, and it bothers me. They was like, "I am not my ancestors. I throw these hands like y'all didn't fight." Y'all did fight. A lot of us fought in different ways. So I apologize for that ignorance. But when you look in everything that you have endured and the decisions you made as a 14-year-old and 15-year-old, making those steps to where you are now and where we are now, how does that make you feel, Mr. Avery?
Well, first of all, don't apologize. I understand where you're coming from, but no apologies needed. As I said earlier, I should be apologizing to you and your generation, because my generation failed to keep telling the story. And so consequently, our young folks don't understand. And that's why I do a lot of public speaking to schools. As a matter of fact, I've been to Memphis on several occasions and spoke at several of the schools, couple of schools there. But we've got to tell the story, so our young folks know where we came from, what happened, and so that those things don't happen again. And that's why I don't want to say mad or upset. I have issues with this critical race theory thing. It's not about critical race theory. It's about history. And I don't hear that group of folks saying, "Well, the Jews shouldn't talk about the Holocaust. They don't need to talk about it. It's over with. I wasn't there." You don't hear that. A lot of whites in this country, ancestors came from Germany. So they folks were over there too. But they want to tell us we shouldn't talk about it because I don't own no slaves. My folks, absolutely. But we need to talk about it. We need to tell the story. Because if you don't know your history, and it's obviously we've lost some of it, because look what's happening to us today. They're going back, putting the laws in to keep us from voting. When I came along, that was the fight. The Voting Rights Act of 65, that was the fight. We couldn't vote. And what do you have today in 2022? They're fixing it where we can't vote. And the reason it's being done, and the reason we're not, I won't say we're not fighting. But the reason they're doing it is because we failed to tell the story to your generation and a few other generations. You can't let this happen. You got to get out there and fight. You got to protest, because whether you believe it or not, and I tell young folks, voting is the most important thing in the world, because those people who we put in office controls your daily life. From the time you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night, your life is controlled by laws that people pass. So it's important that you be involved in who is setting and passing laws. And they realize that. That's why they're now putting in all these laws, because they're in control right now. And if we don't hurry up and do something, we're going to be worse off in 2023 and 2024 than we was in 62, 63, and 64 before the Voting Rights Act, because they are slowly fixing it where they're going to be able to control the whole voting apparatus. I hear a lot of people say, well, voting don't mean anything. You got to have $1. Well, I have a consulting company. Well, we have a consulting company. And what I've been working with and who I've been working with, municipalities, with all these federal dollars that are coming down the pike. And I'm going to challenge your listeners that they go and look up the executive order that President Biden signed in January of 21. When the first day he was in office, if people remember, he signed 17 executive orders. Executive Order 139-.85. 139.85. Everybody in this country, particularly Black folks, need to read that executive order. White folks have read it. They understand it. But they are ignoring it because we haven't read it and we haven't demanded what's in that executive order. The executive order clearly states that all federal dollars from that day that he signed it have to be spent equitably. 50% of every federal dollar has to be spent, and he spells out the classes and the individuals who that money should be spent with. And so, please, ma'am, and please, sir, and your audience, please go read that executive order. Then he did one step further. He did another executive order, which is 140.50, and it deals with education. A lot of the HBCUs and colleges got quite a bit of funding as a result of that executive order. We need to read, and we need to talk about what's going on out there. I don't know, and I'm getting off on something else now, Doc.
Go ahead.
But I'm not sure how much the money that the city of Memphis received from the PPP monies, because a lot of cities gave that money back. They didn't spend it all. But and of course they got the Build Back Better plan that they're still pushing. But the Aqua money, the American Rescue Plan funds, I'm sure the city of Memphis got well over $100 and some million. Well over $100 and some million. The school system in Memphis got well over $100 and some million, because they got more. The school system got more than the government, the municipal governments. And I know y'all have a municipal county governments combined, so I'm not sure. Need to look that up. But those dollars should be spent accordingly to the executive order. And I guarantee you they're not being spent in Memphis. They're not being spent in Gasden. And they're not being spent in any of those cities, because we, as Black folk and people of color, are not there demanding, based on the executive order, that those dollars need to be spent in our community. Now I get off my soapbox. You might have a question.
No, Mr. Avery, you can say whatever you want to. You've deserved the right to be on the soapbox, and you don't have to apologize for not telling the story, because we have to read and research. That's what the Doc Holliday Show is for. That's why we started the show, to shine a black light on, and I say black light because it's us, on things and issues, our contributions, our struggles, our triumphs. This is what this show is about. You epitomize what this show is about. You, and when I had my dad on. You know, positive images of black men and black women, specifically black men, because we get tore down in every other way. So you don't owe me an apology. You don't owe us an apology. We have to get out off of social media, except when you're watching the Doc Holliday Show. Other than that, get off of social media and read and research, because it's all there. So I appreciate you sharing the information and everything you've been through. I salute you. I thank you. And is there anything else you want to add, Mr. Avery, before we wrap it up? Because I have enjoyed every last second of this.
Well, the only thing I want to add is, please, ma'am, and please, sir, like he just said, read. It's been said, and I don't like to give all those cliches. It's been said, if you want to hide anything from us, you put it in a book, because we don't read. But in this situation, with all of these dollars and things that are coming down the pike that's not coming into our communities, please, ma'am, and please, sir, do read. And let me go back and do my commercial if I can.
Yeah, of course you can. Yes, sir. Cassius said thumbs up. Yeah, do it.
Okay. Like I said, my wife and I have a company. It's called GJA Consultants. We work with small businesses and nonprofits. I like to say we do them from the cradle to completion. We do paperwork. We help them get their 501c3. We also help them with grants and the whole 9 yards. We're on Facebook. Well, I'm on Facebook. The company is not, but I'm on Facebook. It's Robert Avery Sr., Gasden, Alabama. And the last one I want to get in is, if you feel good about donating some money.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Go to Robert Avery for Mayor, Gasden. You can donate some money there and keep up with us. Our election is in August, and we're going to take the city back and make sure our city go forward and help some of those young folks that you've been concerned about, Doc, with those businesses and stuff.
Yes, sir. And one question I got to ask you, Mr. Avery, out of all them rides you took, you said majority of them was from white people, and the last one was from a black family. Was there one time now that y'all got in the car and was like, maybe we shouldn't have jumped in the ride with these? You know what I'm saying? Because that's a lot. You're showing a lot of trust, my man, especially in them times.
Well, yeah, but basically all of them was, every last one of the rides were great.
Yes, sir.
The one that made me a little jittery, we got in the pickup truck. You got
in the pickup truck or in the back?
The white, no, we were in the truck.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
He put us all in. We crammed in, and the history with the good old boys with their pickup trucks is not a good history.
Yeah.
but he said, you boys, it's dangerous out here, and you know what you're doing? Because we had a sign that says Washington or burst. So people knew where we were going or what was going on.
Yeah.
The way he said it kind of got me a little bit, but not really. Again, like I say, back then, all white folks wasn't bad.
Yeah, of course not. Of course not.
And all black folks wasn't good.
Yeah,
that's the same thing today.
Yeah.
So that was it, man. The book is going to be released sometime this summer. We're looking at probably releasing the book on the anniversary of the march. So sometime in August. So be on the lookout for that too. But I just appreciate you and the things that you're doing to help in the community and open people's eyes. We just need more people like you too.
Well, I appreciate that. All praises to the Most High. I give God, the Most High, all the credit, even for inspiring me and allowing me to get to this point, to want to do this, because that's how much I love us to tell our stories and to help uplift us, because mainstream media is not going to do it. So to be able to share stories like yours and to be able to have a strong, magically melanated black man who has made it to your point and went through everything you went through, and even going through, because I guarantee that man said it like this. He probably was chewing a little backer. You boys know. You boys know what you're doing. You boys know what you're doing out here.
And he wasn't smiling.
No, of course he wasn't. You boys know what you're doing out here.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. So, but it was again. Somebody asked me one time, if I had to do all over again, would I do it? And the answer is yes. I think I'd do it in a heartbeat. So. That's just been my commitment all my life. Like I say, I'll be 74 in August, and if I had to go and do it all over again, I don't know of anything I would change.
Well, Mr. Avery, I thank you so much. I appreciate you coming over here sharing the story. Not only that, I appreciate you going through that story to help us get to this point, to help me get to this point. So I would tell you thank you a million, trillion, billion times. Put all those zeros together. That's how much I appreciate you and your generation and the generation before you and our generation before you. So thank you so much. And that's going to do it for another great episode of the Doc Holliday Show, where we love to uplift black men, black women, black teen, black child, black royalty, the magically melanated. Until next time, we out.
What you cooking?